ironically, doesn't simply address itself to Muslims. It addresses itself to humanity. And in the view of Muslims, God is the God of humanity. He is the God of us all. And He's beyond anything imaginable. In fact, and I know this is Bradley University, this is a private university, and I can't use fancy words. In fact, even our saying He is simply an issue of literary expediency. We don't really believe God is male, nor do we believe God is female. But it would be too impersonal and, in fact, quite ignoble to say it. So we say He, just to bring Him closer. But He is not male. He doesn't have a gender. He's beyond that. But He says, and that's literary expediency, in the Quran, we have created you, all humanity, from one male and one female, and then we made you into different nations and tribes so that you may come to recognize one another. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, the one who is the most noble, the one that is the most esteemed in the sight of God, is the one who is the most conscious of Him. And this is a very beautiful verse, because this verse is talking about celebrating diversity as opposed to simply tolerating diversity. See, you have places where diversity is tolerated. And this means, look, you have some interesting foods. I think those little dances that you guys do are kind of cool. I saw some break dancers on the subway. It's not really my taste, but we can tolerate you. No, we celebrate diversity because it is one of the greatest signs of God. So the fact that we have such a varied assortment of people and kinds of people is really, really a beautiful thing. Now, what they asked me to discuss in this session, and I will try to do so briefly, although succinctness of speech is a gift that I don't possess. My wife is always reminding me of that. But it's fasting. And fasting is from those things that are very publicly known about Islam. If you ask people who have had limited contact with Muslims, what do you know about Muslims? Now, the most identifiable sign of Muslims is actually the headscarf. They say, in fact, after the crucifix, the headscarf is the single most identifying religious symbol in the world. When you see a crucifix, you know people of the Christian faith are present. When you see a headscarf, you know, these are Muslims, people of the Muslim faith, right? But after that, things that are commonly known about Muslims are like, okay, they don't eat pork. Most people know that. I knew that when I was a Muslim. You know, the first thing I thought when I accepted Islam was, man, no more smothered pork chops. I don't know how I feel about this. And something else that's very commonly known about Muslims is that they do engage in this fasting. Ramadan is the month of fasting. But besides Ramadan, fasting is a practice that is encouraged in Islam. And I'm going to try to very briefly elucidate some of the reasons why. But before I do that, or maybe in the process of doing that, I want you to take a journey. No, we're not going to ask for anything. Usually when someone comes, take a journey. It's called the ask. At the end of the journey, it's like, so now take a journey. And imagine, for some of you, I want you to imagine an ancient sage sitting on the edge of a town. Does anyone know what sage is? I'm not talking about the spice. Not sage and spice. A different sage. Sage, think a great man of wisdom, or for that matter, a great woman of wisdom. You know, there's some people talk about issues of gender, but you can take this to your props here. English is the way that things are gendered in the English language, there's a lot of gender bias in the English language. So for instance, what is the female equivalent of a fellow? It is. But sage is also one of those words. It really refers to a great man of wisdom. But in our case, because we're equal opportunity type folks. We'll say a great man or a great woman of faith. For some of you, I want you to think about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah bless him and grant him peace. He's sitting on the edge of town with his companions, and they're referred to as companions. They're not referred to as disciples, nor are they referred to as followers, to highlight there's intimacy there, there's closeness there, there's a bond there. And they're sitting, and mind you also, they're from a small town. And one of the things about small towns is that everybody knows everybody. See, in the big city, it's normal for me to walk out my home and see someone that I don't know. I'm from Chicago, I live in Chicago. But in a small town, oh, that's Miss Annie Mae's son right there. Oh, that's Miss Jackson's son. Same thing with your mother's son. Oh, that's Muhammad's daughter, that's Fatima's daughter, that's so-and-so's cousin. Everyone knows everyone. That's one of the things that's frustrating about being in a small town, because you can't do nothing without somebody nosy seeing you and saying, yeah, I seen Dollar Mays going down there at the town. I saw him. You can't do nothing. So they're from a small town, and all of a sudden, someone appears before them. He's a man, he's dressed in a white, flowing white garment. They say that his hair was strikingly and exceedingly black, and his garment was strikingly and exceedingly white. And this is significant because the whiteness of his garments tell us that he isn't a traveler. Despite the fact that no one there knows him, this is a small town. So, if it's a small town, everybody knows everybody. Here comes this guy. We don't know who he is. Okay, well maybe he's traveling. You know, maybe he's passing through. But his clothes are too white for that. See, I lived in Yemen. And in Yemen, you get dirty. In fact, there's a joke that if there's any Yemenis here, we'll do definitely see you before I make the joke. But there's a joke that if Adam, the first man, were to return to earth, the only place he would recognize is Yemen. Because it hasn't changed at all. I used to live in Yemen. That's one of the first places I began learning the Arabic language. And my first day of class, I come out, I'm all turned out. You know, and all of the people in the building were laughing at me. I'm like going to my class, I'm all turned out, I'm all decked out. About 20 minutes later, my entire outfit was covered with dust. And I said, I thought I looked cool this morning, man, you know. But it's one of those kinds of scenarios in the desert. So his clothes are exceedingly white. Then he comes up to the sage, for some of you. For others, he comes up to the Prophet Muhammad. He says, Ya Muhammad. He calls him by his first name, which indicates what? There's some familiarity here. And everyone is so shocked. Nobody says, wait a minute, what's going on here? He proceeds to ask the question, Ya Muhammad, what is Islam? What is Islam? The Prophet tells him, what Islam is to bear witness that there's nothing worthy of worship besides God. That Muhammad, I am his messenger, the culmination of his messengers, the culmination of prophet. To pray 5 times daily, to fast during the month of Ramadan, to pay a mandatory alms to people that are indigent and poor, and to make pilgrimage to Mecca. This is something that's going on right now. In fact, you'll see many Muslims leaving soon to make the pilgrimage. And then the visitor says, Sadaqta, you have spoken the truth. And at this point, they're flipping. Wait. Who is there that can say to the Prophet, yeah, that's right? Because everything he gives us is new knowledge. Everything he gives us is new information. So someone being that we don't know, and we don't know to be a Muslim and a member of the community that learned from him, being able to tell him, yeah, that's right. It's like, this is backwards. Then he says, what is Iman, or what is faith? And he said, faith is to believe in God, to believe in his angels, to believe in his prophets, to believe in his books, to believe in the day of judgment, and to believe in divine predestination. The good of it and the bad of it. See, believing in the good of divine predestination is easy. Let me tell you. God decreed that I get this portion. I love it. It was written for me. It's my destiny. But But believing in the bad of it is a little bit more difficult. When you're in a tough circumstance, to believe that God decreed this circumstance for me because I'm supposed to learn something. Then the visitor said, yes, this is true. This is true. You've spoken correctly. Then he says, what is ihsan? What is spiritual excellence? He says, spiritual excellence is to worship God as though you can see Him. Imagine that. How would we, because a lot of us, we have certain doubts, we have certain uncertainties, insecurities about faith. What if you could see God? How would that inspire you or motivate you to serve Him? One of my teachers used to say, those who don't serve God don't really know God. Right? So it's to worship God as though you can see Him. And if you can't see Him, know for sure that He can see you. It says you have spoken the truth. And then this is where I really want you to pay attention. This is where I really would like you to focus. The question is then asked, when is the day of judgment? Meaning the day where people, whether people before us, people now, or people that will come after us, all of them will be raised up and they will be taken to task. They will be held accountable for the decisions that they made in this life. When is that day of judgment? And so the prophet says to him, the one being questioned doesn't know any more about that than the one asking the question. However, I can tell you of some of its signs. Meaning there are certain signs that the day of judgment is approaching. But no one except God knows exactly when it will come. And then the question says, please, indulge me, tell me of some of its signs. And he says, the first sign is that a slave will give birth to her master. Now, for some of you, you're thinking, dude, slavery was abolished a long time ago. What are we talking about here? But dig a little deeper. And I'll come back and I'll explain. Think about it a little deeper. I'll come back and I'll explain. The second thing he said was that you will see poor, barefooted, destitute Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula competing with each other in building tall buildings. And just FYI, 2/3 of the world's cranes are in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. FYI, I'm just saying. 2/3 of the cranes in the world are in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So that competition is really taking place. They're building buildings. And these signs, I'll tell you a story about these signs. When I first became Muslim, I remember reading something from Prophet Muhammad that the day of judgment will not come until a man's shoe speaks to him. And I was a newly minted Muslim, and I was thinking to myself, it's going to be really hard to accept this religion. I just became Muslim. My mother is a scientist. I mean, we weren't like hardcore materialists, but she had a scientific background, and she's my mom. And now I'm here learning about talking shoes. I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep this up. But I said, who knows what's meant by it. I'll just tuck it away, come back to it at a later time. One morning, I'm out jogging. I run. Pray for me. I'm trying to get in shape for a marathon. I'm trying to 26.2. I run. I'm out running. I stop. Right, I finish my run. Another guy stops. He presses a button on his shoe, and the shoe says, "You have run 4.5 miles." And I'm like, and Nike sells, you go to Nike Town right now, downtown Chicago, you can buy these shoes that will tell you audibly how long you've run. They can tell you how much weight you lost, how many calories you burned, how much weight you lost, how many calories you burned, how far you run, and the shoe speaks to you. And I think the shoe can even tell you your heart rate, maybe. I'm not sure. But the shoe does speak. So I'm like, and the guy's like, dude, it must have been an intense run. I'm pointing at his shoes saying, your shoe is talking. Your shoe is talking. And I just stopped and I said, wow, there are things that are a part of prophecy. And when I read that in 99, it was like, this is ridiculous to me. And now in 2012, shoes really do talk. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. And I just stopped and said, whoa, maybe I have to take this more seriously. But think about these prophecies. Think about these prophecies. The first thing is that you have a woman giving birth to her master. How much time do we have? Oh my God, we talked about that. Okay. So a woman giving birth to her master. This means this is her son. We know that of all of the values we esteem in Islam, filial piety or respecting your parents is really high on that list. So here it is, she's giving birth to someone that should be serving her, yet she's serving him. And many scholars say this is an indication that towards the end of time, people will just disrespect their parents. People will treat their parents as though they're slaves. It's not literal slavery, although it can be literal slavery as well, and that has happened. But people will treat their parents like their parents are their slaves. Then the Arabs of the desert, that second sign, these are people known for simplicity. They're known for keeping things basic, being very rustic. And now they're competing with each other in extravagance. And in both of those signs and all of the other signs, you see that things are backwards. Things are out of place. Just like the prophet said, you will notice that at the end of time, the people with the most moral virtues, the people with the most dignity, these will be the people despised in society. These will be the people looked down upon, people that take stands for principle. However, the people without virtue, these will be the people that are esteemed. Backwards. This is where we are. I'm not saying we're at the end of time. I don't have any knowledge of that. But I think very significantly, many things in our society are way out of place. Things need to be, we need to be returned. And I'm not saying that as like a person who hates them. I'm not America of the world. Our species. All of us here are human, right? I think I might be the only one having evolved to that level. Right? But our species, things are really out of place. Things are really out of balance. Things are really backwards. And what ends up happening is we just grow so accustomed to it that it's just every day. It's just, it's like the movie, who saw that Adam? I can't believe I'm talking about Adam Sandler movie. The Adam Sandler movie, Click, where he has the remote and he can like stop light, pause it, fast forward it, rewind it. But there's a mode that he can go into in Click called autopilot. And it's just like, most of us, we have no presence. We're moping through our days. Either we're distracted by WMDs, not weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass distraction. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, email, right? Or we're thinking about what's coming next, or we're thinking about what we just left, but we have no presence in the moment. And the thing that connects you most to your moments, believe it or not, is food. Food is your essential connection to the world. After air, there's nothing you need more than food. You even need food more than an iPhone 5C. Believe it or not, you need food more than an iPhone 5C. Nothing connects us to the world like food. So what happens when you take someone's food away is that it produces a state of awareness. It's like, wow, for the first time, I'm denied something that I usually have access to. And then people start to wake up. It's, even like as Americans, we're not even accustomed to feeling hunger. I had a friend from West Africa. He came to America. He went into Whole Foods and started crying because he had never seen so much food in one place. He had never seen so much food in one place. This is the kind of privilege. This is the kind of access to plenty, access to abundance that we have. Some of us have never even experienced what it is to be hungry. So how much are we missing in terms of other things that we're just floating through life on autopilot? Wake up in the morning, take the shower, put on the clothes, start the car, get to school, have the coffee, listen to the lecture, finish the class, go gossip with my friends, talking about Breaking Bad. You see the episode the other night. And wake up tomorrow and do it all over again. So to introduce a concept here, I'd like you to think about mindfulness. Being mindful. Being present in your moments. Really seizing your life. And sometimes to do that, you have to break out of your normal routine. You have to do something to break out of your normal routine. Now, one of the things about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that he, obviously there are certain things that are part of Muslim life, and routine is a part of that. So we pray 5 times a day, for instance. But in order to really be present, we would see him do things like, if he walked one way to the mosque, he would always go back a different way. To stay present. You don't want to become like a robot. You want to have humility and sensitivity and feeling. And what we're hoping is that by promoting fasting through a program like the Fast-A-Thon, and it's a voluntary fasting, it's not mandatory for Muslims. We're hoping to encourage people to be present, encourage people to be awake, to be sensitive to what they feel, and hope that they can also be sensitive to what others feel. And it's really, really simple. This is what fasting does for me. I've tried to limit my comments to just a small window that I was given. I would love to go into more, but some people here perhaps did fast, and I'm sure they're hungry and not to sit down. So I say that asking you to forgive me. If I said if anyone is from Yemen, I'm offending them. Forgive me. I love Yemen. But yeah, just feeling that and being present, breaking the routine, so that we can get things back in the proper places, back in the proper perspectives. And while we eat, hopefully we can engage in more discussions and more dialogue about this and related issues. Thank you.
A big thank you to Ubaydullah for that really awesome speech. I'm sure all of us appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir. For Muslims, it's actually time to pray Maghrib. So for the Muslim people that haven't done wudu, we'll give you like 5 minutes to go and do it. If you have any questions, Ubaydullah, do you have wudu?
No.
Okay, so we can all go to wudu.
But I'd like to take some questions and
yeah.
also just hear from people. I mean, I see some familiar faces. But there are also people here that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting. And I just want to know, not only just what you thought about what I said, maybe you think nothing about what I said. Maybe it was convoluted and crazy. But I'm like that, so it's okay. But more so, just what you guys are thinking about anything. Somebody else speak beside you.
Your stories, I like to people's songs.
No questions. That usually means it was really bad or really good.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
Where did you convert to Islam?
Why or when?
When and why?
I converted to Islam was I was interested in Islam when I was 12, actually. And I actually thought, oh, this sounds cool, right? But I didn't convert. I ended up converting graduating about the age of 15, 16. And I got serious around the end of my junior year in high school. So I mean, I had the lamest senior year ever. I was like all Muslim. Oh my gosh, we were hanging out, and I was like, they used to call me the monk.
What made you interested in Islam?
Lots of things. And, for me personally, I think a major factor was the clarity of Islam. I am not an expert in what's called Christology in terms of detailed study and knowledge of the Trinity. But just for me as a layperson, it was something that was confusing, but that's not always bad. It's not always bad for me to be confusing. But I think I wanted a certain kind of clarity in my belief. And when I heard about this very radical monotheism, it just really appealed to me. About this one God, he's unlike his creation, he's unique, he's indivisible, he doesn't have co-sharers or partners in his divinity, and it made sense to me. And then the second part of that, this idea of the universal brotherhood of humanity, because right before I converted to Islam, I was something like black nationalism. But I didn't really, it was like I had adopted nationalism as a form of resistance and rather self-love. Like I love myself, I love my culture, I love my people. But there was a part of me that felt like this is necessary to love myself, to love my culture, to love my people. But this isn't adequate. There's so much more. I don't want to spend my life doing something that should just be like say, oh, of course you love yourself, of course you love your culture, you love your. But what more is there in terms of how I relate to all men, and even the environment and animals? So when I learned about Islam, this idea of this brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity, it really took a huge weight off my back. I remember I was like in my radical faith, like nationalism, in high school. There was a young, this is like one of the most rotten things I've ever done. There was a young, and it's so funny, like the serendipity, it was so, it was amazing the way this happened, right? There was a young black girl, and she walked home and she dropped her books. And then me trying to be this kind of sterling African-American gentleman, I rushed to pick the books up. And then right after that, I walked up, and then a young white girl, she dropped her books and I just kind of walked past. And I felt so bad about that. I felt like there's something not right here. Was she in any less need of my help, my assistance? She didn't matter simply because of skin color. And I thought about that. And so this is kind of just some of the things that I was thinking about. Places that I work. Yes. Excuse me? My parents, yeah, well, my mother wasn't a very fervent Christian. She practiced what we call the religion of good people. I believe in God. I go to church on Christmas and Easter. Don't hurt anybody. And live your life and have fun. So she wasn't like, you're turning your back on our ancestral religion or something like that. She just wanted me to be sure that I was living in a very religious community, that I wasn't religious. Her biggest beef with me as a Muslim was I was listening to watching prayer and turning her bathroom into a water park. Now, I don't know about Islam, but if your religion teaches you to turn my bathroom into a swimming pool, I'm not with that. So other than that, we didn't really have much issue. Yes? Are you questions? Have a question? No. We'll take a few more questions, comments, and then we'll wrap up. Yes?
I had a comment
just trying to encourage more sensitivity, trying to be more awake, to be more present within ourselves, and then being able to really empathize. See, I really feel that one of the things happening now is that we are a people lacking the ability to empathize with other people. We don't, it's almost like if it doesn't pertain to me, it doesn't pertain to my very particular individual and unique set of circumstances, it has no relevance to me. And if it doesn't apply, I let it fly. That's what we said when I was a kid. If it don't apply, let it fly. Right? But being sensitive to, wow, how must he or she feel? There's a beautiful story about sensitivity, and I'll close with this. There was once the Prophet Muhammad, the central prophet of Islam, sitting in a mosque with his companions, and then a very rustic, kind of desert fellow walks up and urinates right in the corner of the mosque. And he really didn't know that he was doing anything bad. Because where he was from, that's how we do it. We gotta go, we gotta go. And so, many of the members of the Muslim community at that time, the companions of the Prophet, they were deeply offended, as you would be. You would be offended if someone urinated in your home, not to mention your place of worship. Somebody just came in. Imagine I come to your house to have tea, and I say, "Would you just came in?" I'm sorry. You would be deeply offended. So they actually wanted to harm that man. They were like, naturally, like, wait a minute, is this some obvious attempt at disrespect by desecrating our place of worship? How dare you? So they're like, bursting at the seams. And so the Prophet says, no. Just bring me some water. He, with his blessed hand, actually pours water over the place where the man urinated. Right? Then he calls the man close. Can I speak to you for a moment? And the sense you get from the story, the man is like, hey, what's up? You talk to me? What's up? He said, these are mosques, they're places of cleanliness, places of worship, and places of prayer. And they really are suited like for you to urinate in them. And the man said, oh, I didn't know. Right? It made like the chance that maybe he didn't know. So then they're praying. After they finish praying, the man raises his hands in prayer, and you know what he says? God, forgive me and forgive Muhammad and don't forgive anybody else. Because, he just saw the people like, they were angry at him and they want to do something to him. Forgive me and forgive Muhammad and don't forgive anybody else. And then the Prophet looks at him and says, look at hajab the truly, you've taken something very broad, like the mercy of God, and you've made it very narrow. You constricted it to just us two. But there's a lot of empathy in that story. You have someone who just has a different code of conduct. He doesn't know. Then you have people that, man, they're angry. Their place of worship was desecrated. He didn't castigate them either. Their anger is understandable. Then you have someone that, man, they wanted to hurt me, but you explained to me, God forgive them, and then no, forgive them too. So this is the spirit of empathy and understanding, just in that single story. And there's never a limit to how much you can understand what someone else is going through. So I say that, let's pray, let's eat, let's converse. Thank you.